Hi, friends. Hope you're doing well. Hope you've had a fruitful time researching your topics. I'm looking forward to sharing with you what I've learned in my research here. The title of my paper is Black Soldiers, Politics, and Manumission in Revolutionary Virginia. And what this research does is explore Virginia policies before, during, and after the American Revolution as they pertain to the recruitment and manumission of black soldiers. Many people don't realize that during the Revolutionary War, nearly 5,000 blacks served in integrated units. This would be the last time there was actually military integration of whites and blacks until the Korean War, 175 years later. Um, and in Virginia, you don't see the same type of recruitment efforts for African Americans that you did see in, say, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, and other states. Now, because of the economic dependency of the South on slave labor and the growing fear that African Americans who were trained, who were armed, could fight for their own liberty against the political elite in the South, as well. None other than George Washington issues a firm order during the Revolutionary War, initially saying the following: neither Negroes, boys unable to bear arms, nor old men unfit to endure the fatigues of the campaign are to be enlisted. So initially, George Washington gave a hard no to bringing in African Americans into the army, but the British had other ideas. Lord Dunmore, the last royal governor of Virginia, issued what's come to be known as the Dunmore Proclamation, basically saying, listen, slaves, servants, if you can make it to the British line and you're willing to fight, I will ensure that you are freed at the end of this war. He created something he called the Ethiopian Regiment that initially began with about 300 African Americans, and that number would grow to about 800. Eventually, he is going to be forced to retreat out of Virginia, but he's going to take that Ethiopian regiment with him to Nova Scotia in Canada to freedom. After the Dunmore Proclamation, George Washington changes his mind and allows free blacks who have already been serving in the army to re-enlist. And obviously, other African Americans would serve in state militias as well. But we don't see Virginia bring African Americans into state militias, at least not into combat roles, and this is going to prove detrimental. You may have read that in the winter of 1781, Benedict Arnold actually launches an invasion of Virginia. He moves up the James River with 1,500 British regulars, burning plantation after plantation. And he is contested by only 200 Virginia militiamen. That's it. He makes it to Richmond and basically sacks the city, burning most of it, forcing the Virginia political elite to flee. And then he retreats from the same direction that he came, pillaging and burning all the way back to Portsmouth, Virginia. And had the state been able to overcome its biases against African Americans, they easily could have raised a militia large enough potentially to counter that. But because of those biases, the state of Virginia did not have the manpower at the time to resist that invasion. Following the Revolutionary War, the state of Virginia basically passes two laws to make it easier to emancipate slaves, but does not take the steps to fully emancipate slaves in Virginia. And again, that is because of the economic dependency of slavery. But it does make it easier for individuals for slave owners to emancipate their own slaves. And it does offer emancipation to slaves that served in combat roles for the Commonwealth. But, before you think that's a very big altruistic step, understand that in the prior, 120 years, the state of Virginia had been suppressing African Americans' rights to own weapons, to join a militia. They were only able to be like drummers and trumpeters and manual laborers in the Army. They were never able to field weapons. So very few Black Virginians were actually eligible to be freed under this combat um, clause in that law in 1783. You may have heard of James Armistead Lafayette, who was a spy for the Patriots. Even he had difficulty being emancipated under that provision because he did not serve a combat role. He was a spy, and when he put in his application, it got gummed up, and it took a recommendation from his master and from the Marquis Lafayette himself before the General Assembly granted him his freedom. So, in summary, it was a pretty interesting topic. I certainly learned a lot. I've got a bit that I can share with my students in the classes that I teach this upcoming year. I hope you've enjoyed this. I will link my paper to this discussion board in case you want to take a look at it when you get. It's not quite done yet, but we're getting there. Anyways, I hope you guys have a good time and take care. God bless.